I'm standing here with Thinley Namgyel of the delegation from Bhutan. Thinley, maybe an obvious place to start is to ask you to introduce a little bit about your country to our viewers, because I think there's probably lots of people around the world who don't know very much about Bhutan. So maybe you could give an introduction of your country.
Sure. Bhutan's a really small country. It's in the eastern Himalayas, so it's completely mountainous. And we're sandwiched between the two giants, China and India. So we have less than 1 million people, and very vulnerable to climate change, being very mountainous. The glaciers, as you know, are rapidly melting in the Himalayas, and especially so in Bhutan. For some reason, it's very rapidly disappearing, and we have glacial lakes that are growing larger and larger and posing the risk of bursting and flooding, what's called gloughs. The last incident we had was in 1994, and it's not just the floods, the danger of floods that threatens us also, it's even the longer term of what happens to the glaciers, ice and the water for us, and even the monsoons getting heavier and even more intense. The scope for landslides, floods, and the impacts on the local people. For everything, I guess, is similar to, and for the water resources, the impacts are similar as many other countries that are heavily dependent on agriculture. As a LDC agriculture, a lot of the people, about 70%, are still dependent on subsistence farming, so it's their livelihood which is also at risk. And going back to this glough thing, this has captured a lot of the attention because it's so visible, and the impact has been recent. Just this week, a team came back from one place in the high mountains of Bhutan called Tortomi. About 300 people were up there working basically with basic tools because it's so remote. It's a 6-day walk, and the location is at about 4,500 meters. And they were trying to lower the risk from one lake, which is called Tortomi. And this is being done under the LDC fund as one of the first NAPAs. And we've been trying to lower the risk of flooding from there by lowering the lake level, by draining it out by about 5 meters. The goal is for 5 meters, but it's been tough. This year they managed about 1.3 meters. Last year they managed barely a meter. So we're just halfway there, and then we have 1 year left now under this project to do this. So this is one of the urgent things we're feeling in Bhutan right now.
And you mentioned that the glaciers are melting. There was some controversy at the end of last year because of a report that inaccurately predicted that all glaciers in the Himalayas would disappear by 2050, I think. But you say that you're seeing this already, you're seeing it happening now. Could you kind of explain some of the impacts of climate change that you're witnessing in Bhutan?
Sure. Well, the glaciers are one of the most visible ones that we're seeing, and despite what the controversy over the IPCC was mainly about the deadline. They said 2030, which is not that far away. But the rate at which it's going, I don't think diminishes the urgency and what is really happening. I think the tragedy more was there was not much studies and research coming out on trying to address the accuracy of that date. But from what we have been observing, it's going very rapidly. The other signs, I guess, it's mainly because of the lack of capacity. We don't have much research going there. But from what we observe, we have the snowfalls getting less and less in the winters. You know, when we talk to the people living in the mountains who cross the passes, some communities are usually snowed in for 6 months, but now they can come out throughout the winter, throughout the season. So part of it, I think, has to do with the changing climate in terms of the snowfall and precipitation taking place, and also part of it is, the warming temperature, which is rapidly melting. So there is definitely the rapid retreat in Bhutan. Then some of the other ones we're seeing, it definitely is getting warmer, and we're seeing new species, crops that you're able to grow where it's not. Of course, being a mountainous country, we're able to see this, the elevational changes taking place. And the worry for us is that not so much if you can grow new crops, that might be beneficial. But the thing is there's even increasing pests, stresses coming out. We're worried that in our foothills we have the malaria, dengue, those diseases, that they might come higher up where the majority of the people are. So that brings really a lot of threat. And then the monsoons, I think we've seen what happened in Pakistan and in India. The variation is getting more and more erratic. And a lot of the people are still, as I said before, farmers. So they're getting they're reporting that earlier they depend on natural, signs in the forests. When flowers come out, It's signals for when they should start sowing and preparing the ground. So this is all going haywire now.
And how many people will be impacted by these changes?
Well, it's a small country, so it's about 700,000, and I would say everybody. We're investing so much in hydropower because we see that as what can drive our economic growth as a clean source of energy. It's not like massive dams, it's just run-of-the-river schemes that we are investing there. So it's driving whatever social investments we're doing in terms of health, education, and the general lifting people out of poverty. But if we lose the glaciers, if we lose the rivers, already we're finding that winter flows are getting lower and lower. So that throws our whole investment and the future development of the country also in jeopardy.
One of the reasons why people might have heard of Bhutan is because of its emphasis on happiness in terms of, rather than measuring its economic product purely in terms of money. Maybe you could just give a very brief overview as to what that means.
Sure. Well, gross national happiness was a concept coined by our fourth king way back, I think, in the 70s, right after he was crowned king. At the time, the question was, we were a small country if you measure it in terms of traditional economic measures like GDP. But the people weren't really suffering or doing too badly. So the response was that, and then as we were opening up our doors to the outside world, we were still about the 1960s, still closed. There were no roads coming into Bhutan. We were still a closed society. So as we opened up, we needed to integrate and also develop the economy to bring the people up to, into the new century. And then it was a way of being cautious, saying that GDP is not everything. So we have to consider the happiness and the well-being of the people. So ultimately, it's looking after well-being holistically. So we say gross national happiness, most think it's like a single index, but it's actually a goal and a development process that we don't forget that there are other things to life and what it means for well-being. So in Bhutan, we've taken this in 4 ways. We say, of course, economic growth is important. If you want to feed the people, if you want to pay for their health, if you want to pay for education, we need the money, so we need economic growth. But then we also need to take care of what we have. As a small country, our culture and identity is important, so the culture is one aspect. And then the environment is one very rich natural heritage we have in Bhutan. In the Eastern Himalayas, we have 70% of the forests is still, country is still forested, and very rich biodiversity. I think they say per square kilometer is one of the most biodiverse countries because it's such a small country from subtropical lowlands to alpine, and because of the rich habitat that's still there. And then the last one is, of course, now to deliver this, the governance needs to be good. So there's been a lot of advances taking place in this also, from getting people's participation. And now you might have heard also recently that in 2008 we had our first full democratic elections. So we're trying to get this whole holistic development taking place. So there's not just pursuit of money and economic growth.
And at this conference with the president in China, a booming economy, we've heard a lot about the importance of shifting our emphasis away from consumption. From your experience in Bhutan, do you think that a focus on a more holistic conception of development is possible? Could there be a new model of development which enables the environment to survive alongside it?
Well, I'll remain optimistic. But it'll be a tough challenge. Even in Bhutan, we state that gross national happiness is our goal. We make a conscious effort to make sure that we take care of consumption, waste management, those sort of things. But it will be a challenge, let's say, we do need to move away from the traditional consumption and focus on this. Just looking at the planet, there's no way we can have a stable climate, and if you want to prevent dangerous levels of climate change, if the whole of half of China increases their consumption to the rest of everybody, and even the rest of the developed countries want to go up. So I think everybody needs to come to a certain balance that we do have, that the carrying capacity of the planet is not, we don't reach a tipping point and go over to the other side now.
Thinley, thanks very much for joining us. It's been really interesting speaking to you. Thank you.